In 1942, the great concert halls of America fell silent, not by decree, but by necessity. The nation's brass was needed elsewhere, not for trumpets, but for shell casings. At the J.W. York and Sons Bell Foundry in Pennsylvania, a different kind of requiem was being composed. The company, which had cast magnificent church bells and carillons for over a century, received a government contract. Their new medium, M1 helmet liners. Their new raw material, a mountain of public donation brass and bronze. The mix arrived in tragic, tinkling streams. A mother's cherished wedding band slipped into a collection bin with a prayer for her son overseas. A family's heirloom candlesticks carried down from the attic. An immigrant shopkeeper's brass samovar, the last physical tie to a homeland already swallowed by war. And bells, hundreds of school bells, dinner bells, sleigh bells, their voices stilled and melted into a single seething crucible. The master founder, Giancarlo Rossi, whose hands had shaped bells to sing of peace, now oversaw the forge that turned memories into armor. He took it as a sacred, sorrowful duty. As the donated metal was fed into the roaring furnace, he insisted on a moment of silence. He believed the metal carried a resonance, a silent prayer from the donor, and he would whisper in Italian, "Porta il loro amor, tenili al sicuro," carry their love, keep them safe. The molten metal was poured not into bell molds, but into press forms, stamped into the familiar shallow dome shape of the helmet liner. Rossi then implemented a secret personal ritual. On the inner rim of every 1,000th liner, using a fine etching needle, he inscribed a tiny, invisible symbol, a musical note. It was his own silent blessing, a fragment of a song cast into the chaos of war. The liners were shipped out by the millions. They landed on the heads of boys in the mud of Italy, the jungles of the Pacific, the frost of the Ardennes. One such liner, inscribed with a tiny F clef, was worn by Private David Miller, a former music student from Ohio, during the landing at Omaha Beach. As his landing craft ramp dropped into hell, a shard of shrapnel screamed off the curve of his helmet with a deafening ping. It was deflected. The liner did its job. Stunned but alive, Miller scrambled up the beach. In a shell crater, catching his breath, he took off his helmet. His trembling fingers found the unfamiliar, smooth curve of the liner inside. He knew steel. This was something else. In the faint light, his thumb found a nearly imperceptible roughness on the rim, a pattern that felt, impossibly, like a note on a staff. He had no time to ponder it. But in that touch, a strange calm cut through his terror. It felt like a message, a fragment of order in the madness, a silent song cast into the void, asking to be heard. After the war, David Miller became a composer. His most famous work, Sinfonia del Ricordo, Symphony of Remembrance, opens with a single struck bell that gives way to a deep, resonant melody in the brass section. A melody he claimed he didn't write, but remembered. A song, he said, he first heard in a moment of silence, etched inside a helmet, on the edge of survival. The story of the Bell Foundry is the story of transformation. It tells how a nation's cherished past was willingly melted down to protect its future, and how in that violent alchemy, a new kind of music was born not of celebration, but of resilience. A silent symphony of scrap, forged in sacrifice, that still echoes in the unbroken line between a mother's prayer and a soldier's chants.